like to welcome everybody to the September meeting of the Southampton Village Planning Board. Sad to see summer over, that's why we're a day late. We had to celebrate Labor Day. And now we're back in action. Could I have a motion to open the meeting?
So moved.
Seconded.
All in favor?
Aye.
If everybody could silence their cell phones so there's no interruptions, that would be great. And we are going to slightly alter the agenda for this evening and move the Beach Plum Meadows application just to the top of the list so that our consultant, Mr. Cleary, doesn't have to wait for the rest of the agenda to take place. The public hearing on this has been closed. There still were a few outstanding questions. I know Mr. McFarland raised some at the work session last week. Do you want to, let's have you pose the question again, Alan, and then I'll get Mr. Cleary to answer it.
Among my concerns, I guess we still have, as I understand it, Bo, this board has the assignment of approving, for its purposes, a site plan, which involves a number of features.
It's a subdivision.
And in getting to that, there are various attributes. The ones that concern me the most, some of what, and it is important, I guess, for the public, and everyone knows that my time of service on this board came long after this matter first appeared. There were hearings and all sorts of stuff to do with it. Design generally of the outcome, which when this board acts goes back, as I understand it, to our village for use of the zoning code for houses and all the stuff that follows. Of the stuff we're supposed to approve under the regulations that apply, there's an issue of, I'll call it plumbing as a substitute, which has to do with the fact it's right next to the water tank. It's next to all the stuff that pertains to the source of water and leaching and everything else, which has been a matter of great investigation on which we have to rely on our able consultant. And he's worked really hard on that, and we have lots of opinions about it that we've heard from experts on water and everything else. And it's a matter that we don't design. We have to approve a recommendation that comes from the county water health department working with, I believe, the water authority, the Suffolk County Water. So that's before us. And I think if we don't approve it, it's an issue. Because this involves, I believe, potentially 16 buildings. And at 16 buildings, there's an issue of nitrogen, is my symbol for an issue that is adversely affected for the neighbor. There are lots of issues that deal with subdividing this land from the, what was it, I guess, the Schwank Dairy Farm years ago into now what people might call a subdivision of 16 homes in this area next to the railroad tracks. There are other issues that pertain, that follow, like park fees and everything else. Another one that catches my attention because of the history of the eastern border of this lot of land is there is a road there which is on lots of ancient maps and everything else. It is a partly used board as a result of a number, and I don't have the exact count. I've seen 5, I believe, on my own investigation. A number of rulings by other authorities in the villages to the use of the road for private purposes, that is for housing. North end, south end, and so forth. And the border of this lot, which I think is before us, makes use, I guess, by way of title, which is not our problem, of half of the road. And it would adversely or possibly affect in some fashion the people who by right of what they own the eastern half of this road, which is, let's say, 30 feet and 15 feet is the subject. So when you have, I guess when it leaves us, it goes to authorities at the building department and maybe the zoning board of appeals. How do I use the 15 feet of the half of this road for the thing? It has to do with lot sizes and all the stuff that are important for the future. So that, I haven't seen resolution before this board of how big the lot is, including that road. maybe it's unimportant, maybe no one cares. But in the past, there have been motions made to the zoning board for use of that road in connection with residences along it. And I don't believe any yet of the things that were assured, like paving it, using it, et cetera, except for the north end, have been done. And the north end may be the whole road, not even part of it, because I think the families there use it for the kids, and I would too if I lived there. I had a personal objection before, which is irrelevant, on the end use of the plot plan, which concerns me because I think it could be better. But if this board approves the subdivision, that will follow as to roads and how many are there and all that sort of stuff. I believe that the plot plan probably on balance, everything we do here makes somebody unhappy. From what I can tell, it always has when I've come before this board for, off and on, for approximately 45 years. In making people, I think the southern neighbors are more unhappy than the eastern neighbors, and there really are no western, and the northern neighbor is the railroad. But okay, that may be the outcome of the trade, but that, of what is proposed to be done that we're supposed to approve. But that's not my issue. Now, on the water thing, I don't think, and I will think it should be stated for the record somehow in our resolution or in however this goes forward, Bo, I don't think that dealing satisfactorily with water in all of the South Fork, and certainly the town and village of Southampton, is yet where we're going to all want it to be shortly. Nor am I convinced that what we've seen for developing a chromoglass facility, which my fellow member, Mr. Hamer, has raised succinct objections to. How does it go in pieces? How do you do it for a few houses and then more houses? How do you do it? It's experimental. We're improving something that has, no, it's not experimental. It has an element of experiment in it because not many of them have been done this way for this facility at this time. I'm not familiar with what's next door for nitrogen in the quarry, as we knew it forever, for Bishop's Pond, which is the immediate plot next door. I'm intently worried for the town and what happens further west when we do, I think the code word is the Roscoe property south of the railroad tracks. These areas, which used to be, I think, grazing land primarily, are going to be an issue. The water flows to the ocean, flows to Shinnecock Bay by several drainages. It's uneven there, and it's a real issue. I have had telephone calls from neighbors to the west, including the Shinnecock Nation, that say they think this affects everybody, not just people north, south, east, or west, but drainage is a real issue for us. We'll face it for a long time. And therefore, if we make a recommendation to approve the drainage, I guess we're doing our best to, because we think it's the least of, like politics, it's the least of bad evils. Maybe that's it. But that's a tough call on this land, and for the people that have owned it, and who will own it, to develop it, and then will own it to live there, I guess they're going to live with it through bonding and indemnifications and then management with the village. But I hope all of that is not something that we talk about now and there's no way to follow up, because we have, what, an ancient deed before us for the rabbi there on Hill Street. Something was written to a covenant years ago. It comes before us and we're still getting to it. It maybe shouldn't have been a covenant, but this stuff lingers, and how you enforce it is hard. And I know from all the visits I'd made, our taxpayers don't pay enough more to have more staff to run the building department, to investigate stuff 24. You don't have enough consultants, investigators, or people to do it. And we may never, maybe we shouldn't. But how we resolve this, maybe the first big one be done right inside the village. We're gonna, if I serve here for a few more months or whatever, we're gonna face it again, because there are other developments I think we face inside the village. They're gonna deal heavily with runoff, with sewage, nitrogen, and it may be more than nitrogen. But that's my concern. It's probably a great idea. I wish the applicants and their counsel could have had this resolved long before I was involved. But it's a lot of things coming together at once on doing something under modern conditions, and I have some hesitation even though it's not okay, about going ahead and saying the plot plan is fine because of the road and the sewage and a basic idea that it's, shall we say, under-inspired. I know we've had objections to say, we should build a park, we should get everyone wants this pot of money called the development fund to buy it back and make it into a playground. We get a lot of things we could do in the village if we were all really wealthy and bought them and were beneficent. That's irrelevant to me. That's not our assignment. We have to deal with people that own it to do it. If they come up with something that's acceptable to go back to the zoning board and put in 16 families of some number of bedrooms and people, I guess we'll live happily ever after. And I don't think we can conduct the police department. I would tell them to do things with the stop signs they may not want to do. Everybody in Southampton, including me, wants access to the next road. If you have a house and a car, that's all you want. You want access to the next road, and the other guy doesn't have a problem. I don't think that's our concern. I am concerned about traffic north of Hill Street, because right now I need Hill Street to get here almost all the time. And so, yeah, I'm concerned, but it's a populated village and probably more people are coming part of the year, so it'll be tough. I don't think it's ours. I can object to saying I don't think it's inspired, but I don't think it's our field of expertise to design the traffic. I'm told by village authorities it's somebody else's problem. But that's my speech. Sorry about that, but it's a tough one, and really tough on the water, because I don't think we know about the water yet. End of speech. Thank you for your patience, neighbors.
Mr. Could would you like to add the points you made to me earlier today about the eastern property line?
Yeah, what I think I'd like to do, Mr. Chairman, the process of demapping the road has been something that the applicant's been working on, and perhaps Mr. Flanagan can give an update of that process, where you are with the demapping of Guilfoyle.
As I understand, Gilbert G. Flanagan for the applicant. As I understand it, present property owners have had discussions with the 5 properties that front on the easterly side of Guilfoyle Street, and I understand there's been at least oral agreement among them that the abandonment can be effected, and of course if that happens then it is no longer a road. And I believe if you examine the survey that I submitted, the actual title survey, not the subdivision map, you find that any improvements to that street are located in the easterly half of it, not on the half that's located on my client's property. So as indicated on the maps that were presented to you, the subdivision maps, a condition of the ultimate approval of this would be the abandonment of that street, which would avoid the problem. Now, there also are provisions in the village code and in the planning board's regulations that would allow 3 or fewer lots to have access from a public road over a private right-of-way, which is not a road by definition. So if 1 or 2 of those people who presently derive access over the easterly portion of Guilfoyle Street need it, that's possible to be done. There's a mechanism for it. I've actually done a subdivision or 2 that has had that kind of access to it. So nobody would be cut off. We've looked at, of the 5 lots, and my associate, by the way, is working on this, but of the 5 lots that front on it, 3 of them derive their actual access from the other adjacent streets. So we're really talking about 2 property owners, but that will be solved, and it will be a condition of final approval if you decide to move that far. So we have it under control. It's always been indicated on the map from day one. I hope that.
The question, Mr. Chairman, really was the private improvements that may have been extended onto the western half of the property. And that's the question, as you just heard, that there aren't any, but that has to be verified. So if someone else's private improvement is on the neighbor's property, that's a private property issue that needs to be resolved, but it would need to be resolved. It would need to be resolved within the time frame of the condition of approval, that someone put a shed on effectively their neighbor's property, but no one knew it because it was in the right-of-way and there was no fence there, and nobody knew. So those things are part of a typical resolution of a demapping of a street, and many times it's simply a private property dispute between who owns the right-of-way and the neighbor's property. But those little details would have to be cleared up and clarified.
My only maybe irrelevant question is, under the code that applies to how this gets done in the village, Bo, does this board, which is kind of an appellant board for building and land use decisions, do we just throw it to another board, which was always the ZBA that was making the rulings, at least since the year about 1981, about the use of this road? Do we throw it to them and say, it's your problem, we wash our hands of it, or is it proper for us to make it a condition of for counsel to tell his client, you've got to get it done properly? Because the eastern people, even without a survey, I'm pretty sure the use of the road is more than 15 feet. There are no improvements on it which were guaranteed in prior ZBA opinions were promised by the 3 of the 5, whatever the number is. Who sees to that? Is that something we make conditional, or is that someone else's problem?
No, it's the planning board, Alan, and it may involve ultimately the Board of Appeals for some kind of variance if it's necessary, but I don't think at the stage we have of information that the board can really make a determination. I certainly can't even draft up a memo of advisement based upon the information at the present time. So depending upon, as Mr. Flanagan said, there might be a resolution to this that's completely
Okay.
satisfactory to all those joining landowners, in which case it really becomes relatively a non-issue.
Pat, you read them all. You've got almost all the stuff you could find. We both went and did our own work to try to find them, because knowing who the
Well,
other people
as
were,
long as you got the consent of all 5 property owners,
that-
it's
that's going to
fairly-
be the applicant's problem, I
fairly way
guess.
down
Okay.
the avenue
Thank you.
toward resolution.
Right, so that would,
On
Alan,
Guilfoyle,
ultimately
thank you.
would have to be a condition of your approval. The applicant would have to satisfy all of those requirements, subject to Bo's,
Thank you.
approval.
Okay.
And he has a limited period of time within which to do all of that, which may be a challenge.
And I don't know what you do in water, except it seems to me you ought to talk to the other village advisors for the trustees on down about how you deal backward with this water issue, because we're just in front. We're the first guy who goes over the barbed wire, okay? Someone else will follow if it doesn't work. How do we deal with the covenants, the undertaking, I guess, of the developer and the people they sell it to maintain this brand-new system? Because it's, I mean, almost everybody here who's a village person will use that water. And those of us who are here for, I don't know, Temic and Union Carbide and everything else, water is an issue over the long run, and our time frame, even serving and what happens, is what we're dealing with, and that's tough. If it was easy, we'd do it.
I can tell you that we've now met with the health department on a number of occasions about this, and the health department has a fairly good understanding of the procedures that must be put in place. How that actually happens and
Yeah,
who's
that's it.
responsible.
The question of
Absolutely right.
happening is our issue.
No question about it, and whether there's enough material to satisfy the first few homeowners until the rest of them come online, it's a question, and it needs to be carefully addressed. So that's why this is not a simple approval to craft. It requires the input from a lot of different agencies, their recommendations on how to do things, and the applicant's consent to actually do those things. So it's a process.
Okay, well,
My
that
understanding
would
that
be
in
my
the
condition.
event the system begins to fail, or if the operator were to abandon it, it becomes the county's responsibility to then run it.
That's exactly right. So there is daily and weekly monitoring of these systems. If it fails, there's a trigger with which the county steps in. This is a bonded improvement, so the county holds the money to actually run the facility if they have to do it. So I can tell you that
So the
the
bond
procedure is
doesn't have to
fairly
be
complex.
a part of our, it's not a condition of approval, it's an automatic feature of this.
That's correct, but what we would ideally like to do, Mr. Chairman, is overlap all of those provisions. So the county's requirements, we would like to duplicate in our approval, that all of these requirements are also addressed, so that it's very clear what the applicant's responsibilities are. And we don't rely on just whatever the county wants is good with us. We want to know what the county wants and make sure everyone's clear.
Because, right now, everything's great and the economy's good and things seem to be improving, but there's been some developments that, since I've been on the board, got started and then the money runs out and then the thing sits there and then it becomes, just a project that's in limbo until the economy improves again. And I would be concerned, as we said, the difficulty of getting this started with just a few houses, and all of a sudden the thing peters out, and you've got a lot of expense to run the sewage treatment plant not being offset by contributions from the anticipated number of houses, and where that leaves the village and the county in terms of operating.
It's an appropriate concern, Mr. Chairman. There is a system in place. None of us have seen that system work, but it's been anticipated, and we can show you what the county will expect in terms of those things.
Does any other board member want to make a statement or ask a question? Well, we certainly studied this issue to the nth degree, considered many different issues and questions and problems, had a great deal of input from the community as well. I would imagine at this point,
Should be preparing for a
Resolution.
resolution for federal.
A resident for what?
Draft resolution for you to review, you'd consider it at your next meeting.
To
Approve.
The way it works, the process is to approve the
This would be a
plan.
preliminary subdivision approval resolution that you'd be drafting. It would carry with it all those conditions that we're describing. And then, once those conditions are satisfied, the applicant would have to then return for final subdivision approval, having met the preliminary conditions.
and that resolution, though, is normally drafted in the affirmative, and the vote is taken place to decide whether to approve that or not.
Correct.
Okay.
So if you would work to prepare that for the
Yeah,
next
Patrick and I
meeting.
will work on that.
Okay, thank you. That brings us to the first item.
Are we adjourning that for all purposes, Bob?
Yes.
Make a motion to approve the request of the applicant to adjourn for all purposes the Beach Plum Meadows LLC.
Have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So the first,
Thank
thank you,
you.
Patrick.
Thank you, Pat.
First item is the Mitchell family request for extension.
File contains a resolution approving the extension based upon review of the documents submitted. Therefore, an affirmative vote on the motion would be to approve the resolution for extension.
So moved.
Have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. There's a request for extension from LMR Associates, Hampton Road.
The request for extension was for 1 month to October, but based upon the history of this, I thought it best to grant an extension, at least they run into any issues, until the November regular meeting. So that is the text of the resolution, and an affirmative vote on the resolution will be to approve it until the November regular meeting.
Good evening, board members. Kevin McGowan of Essex, Hefter, and Angel for LMR Associates. I just wanted to get up to speak. I believe our office submitted a request for a 1-year extension, not a 1-month extension, to October 2016. If the board is amenable to that. It was by letter dated
lost
August
that. Was it-
18th, I have.
Is it 1 year? Kevin, it says the applicant, a building permit has been submitted and is presently pending review. Should that take, does one think, a year?
It's at the board's discretion, of course. We just thought,
That's why I drafted it.
it's been a,
That's
a
why I
long
drafted it.
process.
Yeah,
So
I
we thought
know.
the, building in some leeway would be for the best. But I just wanted to,
That's a little
Make it
bit
clear what
long.
we were
It's a little bit long. That's why I said I granted it to November, thinking that that would be more than enough time if it's already been submitted. No, in fact, that if,
we know it's been submitted. We don't know how long it will
was
take.
the fee paid? Was the fee paid?
As far as I can't say for sure. I wasn't going to submit the
Yeah,
building
yeah.
permit application, but I believe the fee was paid. I believe it's fully submitted in that sense. I suppose we would just request the maximum amount of time the board finds suitable.
I think I state in the resolution when the initial site plan had been approved.
Site plan approval of the applicant, October 3rd, 2011.
So it's been 4 years already. How about the December meeting as a sort of a control date?
If that's, you know, as much as we can get,
I
we'll
think
take
a
it.
year is really.
I mean, on our end, we are trying to move this as fast as possible.
Yeah,
We're
yeah.
fully submitted, so hopefully it goes very quickly.
Yeah, and if it doesn't, I'm sure there'll be defined issues as to what's slowing it up. But I would think that if the application has been submitted upon the documentation that we already know of to the building department, and it's just an issue of reviewing the building specs and site plan compliance, that 3 months should be more than enough. So you want to change that on the application, or my suggestion to then December of 2000, the regular meeting of December 2016, which will be the
Revise the
7th.
resolution.
December 2015.
December of 2015, which will be December 7th of the
Major
month.
change.
Thanks, Kevin.
Thank you.
Yeah, and if there's an issue, just let us know, and
Will do, and I appreciate it. And the one additional matter I just wanted to bring up, it was raised in an additional subsequent letter that was submitted August 27th, was just that, you know, we've complied with all conditions of the site plan approval, but we believe we were mistakenly informed to post the maintenance bond, the landscaping maintenance bond deposit at the time of the building permit application, and we've come to understand that the board's typical policy is to have the maintenance bond be deposited at the time, you know, subsequent to the installation of the landscaping and just prior to the issuance of the certificate of occupancy. No landscaping has ever been
That's
put in
correct.
yet, so we would just request that as part of the resolution, it be clarified that the deposit be returned to the applicant and then be deposited at the time the issuance of the CO occurs.
let me contact your office and whoever holds this, whether it's the clerk's office or not, and try and get that
Sure.
squared away without an official resolution, because the board really doesn't deal with that aspect of the funding.
Understood. I appreciate it.
Okay.
So an affirmative vote on the motion will be to extend the approval until the regular meeting of December 2015.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
The, Paul and Joan Robinson, 105 Little Plains Road.
And likewise, there is a resolution to file extending the approval to the date requested by the applicant.
Mhm. This is Robinson.
Number 3, right? So that's routine, Bo, just.
Yes.
I'll move that.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Moving on to the public hearing segment of the meeting. The first applicant is Crease Properties, 16 Windmill Lane.
For the applicant, David Gilmartin Jr., Farrell Fritz, 50 Station Road, Watermill, New York. The board should be familiar with the application and a public hearing approximately a year ago. And based on some input from our engineers, we've made some changes. If you remember, this is the old Time and Again restaurant building. It's next to Tuscan House. Basically, our changes are to reduce the proposed building and replace exactly what's there. We're gonna try and renovate what we can renovate and then rebuild what is necessary to rebuild, and it will be absolutely in kind, so there won't be any increase in size whatsoever. The other change that we do have is we're going to remove the restaurant use that we're entitled to through the CO that we got in 2009 and replace that with a retail or a dryer use. And those are pretty much the changes. I can try and answer any questions, but our parking requirements are less. We are creating a little more green space, if you will, on the site by creating some grass and removing concrete, but it's pretty simple, straightforward site plan.
Mr. Andrioli raised some question at the work session regarding the fact that even though the footprint is the same and and the building is basically going to be restructured, that there are still some issues with the drainage and the sanitation system.
I was wondering if they have established first floor elevation for this building.
The architect would have that. I don't have it with me tonight.
Because what's crucial on a site is that there's high groundwater. Groundwater is 4.5 feet below grade. And if one assumes that even if the building were at grade, and when you come out with a pipe, there's a certain amount of pitch, there's going to have to be a cover, and then you're calling for 4-foot deep leaching pools plus a septic tank to be installed in a space that I think is rather small in order to accommodate that, and you don't have any depth to groundwater at all below the pools. In fact, the pools will be sitting in water, which would be, in my reading, a violation of the sanitary code. So I would be very much interested in knowing what the health department has to say about this application if you submit it to them as yet.
Well, it's our position that we don't need to submit it, that this is a replacement in kind. The flow is actually less than what's entitled to under the CO today.
Well, the system, what system do you have in there? It's not clear what the existing system is, and if it's adequate even to handle what you have.
The system is probably what was there currently, and there's going to be an upgrade. It can't be the answer to the applicant that you can't do anything with the property.
I think there are solutions to it. I'm merely saying that what's being proposed doesn't meet certainly the sanitary disposal requirements as far as I can see, nor does it meet the stormwater handling the property. You know, one of the rules is that stormwater has to be contained on a property, and I see absolutely no facilities at all for stormwater.
Well, it's something that we can address with our engineers as we go forward. It's a public hearing, so, you know, we're here for the public to be heard on it, and then I understand what the issues that Mr. Angelo are raising, and we'll have our engineers look at it.
Thank you. At this point, I'd like to ask any member of the public if they would like to comment on this application. No.
So if the board would hold it open to the next hearing, and then we'll try and address Mr. Androli's concerns.
Any questions from other members of the board?
I just wanted to let the board know that we did receive an updated EAF to reflect the new conditions, and we'll review that this week.
And I just don't see what kind of options that they have on this. This is a pre-existing building on a site that doesn't have a lot of room around it. If they can submit a plan to the health department and have it approved somehow, and I think they may be able to by just berming up that area in the back because it's all green. I just don't see, just don't see what the issue with it.
Well, you don't see the likelihood
I mean,
of a
it's-
failure of solution.
Mm.
Yeah, failure of solution. My view is all these things are the same as we're worried about with the other ones. We are officially and unofficially, everyone worried about South Fork water. And it's a problem. And we got lots of things that we're gonna do for especially for the taxpayers and their pocketbooks and everything else we're told is one of the solutions. So it's, maybe we can all get together and do the best in the meantime.
What's proposed is a major improvement over what has existed and what exists now.
Absolutely, it's better, but the question is, it's unlikely to be the only one in the commercial part of the village that everybody faces, so we're trying to, that's the goal.
I understand.
So the applicant's requested we adjourn this to the next meeting.
I'll move adjournment.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Southampton Town newspapers.
Yeah.
For the applicant Gilbert G. Flanagan, 21 South Main Street, Southampton, I have an affidavit of posting and an affidavit of mailing. This is an application that you've seen before. As you know, we had a submission conference on it. It's also been reviewed and approved by the Board of Zoning Appeals. A copy of the decision of approval was submitted with the application. For the public's information, as you may recall from the Board of Appeals application, it is a request for permission to construct a 2,600 square foot, one-story office building in the southwesterly corner of this dog-leg shaped property, and also to install some additional off-street parking on the east side of the property, also approved by the Board of Appeals. We did submit separately, as requested by you and by your consultants, a landscaping plan, and I have Tim Rump here if you have any questions about that. We also submitted elevations and lighting details that show the minimal lighting that's going to be used on the building itself. We also submitted a lighting cut, which shows the design of the fixture. Now, just to clarify that point, there were two fixtures shown on that cut, and the fixture we would be using is the one that shines down only, the one that's on the right-hand side of that drawing. There's also some minimal bollard lighting that's proposed along the additional off-street parking that's to be located on the east side of the property, which will be suitably screened. So if you have any questions of me or Mr. Rump, he's right behind me, he's got my back, so I'll be happy to try to answer them.
You guys, do we have any questions?
My only question actually is for Mr. Rump. Just to go through the landscape plan a little bit, about what you're proposing.
Tim Rome from Aris Design, 30 Nugent Street, Southampton, for the applicant. If you'll turn to PP1 in the package, we'll just look, you'll see the location of the proposed building, which is up in that southeast corner that Mr. Flanagan had talked about previously. There's an existing screening that was done by the library that our firm was involved with back when the library was constructed. Those are all fairly large cedars, which are fairly substantial at this point along the eastern and southerly portion of the site. There's substantial screening along the western property line. And you'll notice that the larger deciduous trees in that location are being saved. And there's an extreme shade condition in that area, and we're proposing a low ground cover that will take that existing shade condition at Vinker Minor. We're also, Mr. Flanagan had discussed the proposed new parking, which is along Windmill Lane on the east side of the building. We're proposing a holly, which is an evergreen shrub, to take care of to soften and to really screen and block the cars that might be parked in that area. There's also, as everyone's well aware of, there's quite a grade change there from the level of Windmill Lane. So that parking area is going to be up. And the hollies that we're proposing can take the full sun in that area. And we, as Mr. Flanagan said also, we're showing the location of a bollard that is roughly 42 inches tall. The hollies that we're proposing will be between 36 and 42 inches tall when they are installed.
Where is that bollard?
If you look on the last page of the submission, LP1, you'll see the bollards located between the curb of the proposed parking and in the proposed planting. There are 4 of them. They should appear as a red dot,
Got it.
okay?
Mm-hmm.
And we're trying to minimize any impact, light impact, but still give, when it gets dark out here and at, 4:30 in the middle of winter, we're still having some issues with employees or people that might be visiting the press offices. So there'll be some lighting for that. We're also relocating a couple of crepe myrtles on site and reutilizing those as on site as well, and that's shown on the plan as well. Any other questions that the board has?
And the rest of the existing vegetation stays?
Yes.
Looks good.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any member of the public wish to comment on this application?
Mr. Stevenson and board members, Bill Hattrick. I'm the president of the Cooper Hill Townhouse Homeowners Association and live in the apartments. And I just have a few questions that we're concerned with. And, I have the building inspector gave me a copy of the location of the building and so on, and you're always concerned that you can't see. There is considerable screening between the townhouses and the existing building, but the existing building is considerably smaller than the proposed building. And our concern is simply its impact on the apartment number 4 and 5, and its impact on them both as to its visibility, and you mentioned lighting and so on. And I was going to ask if there was one thing that would make it a lot easier for us to support this. Would it be possible to request that you put markers where the 4 corners of the building are going to be, so that and I think it was stated by Mr. Flanagan and Mr. Rumpf that the existing vegetation will not be touched, but I'm not sure which vegetation he was talking about, and we'd just like to be reassured what is there now is really considerable, and it is a 1-story building, thank God. But I'd feel greatly relieved if we saw exactly where the location of the building was and its impact on, particularly on Unit 5 and Unit 4, and to the degree to which it would be visible. I also know that the resident that lives closest to the existing building has complained that when the press comes out each Wednesday night and Thursday morning, there's delivery trucks come in and use this ramp that's on the west side of the proposed property and on our east side. And just that you, if there's any way that you could make sure that the screening is certainly as good as it is now, and conceivably even better if you thought it was advisable. And I'd love it, though, if I knew exactly. I can look at it. On this drawing, it looks to me as though that the building inspector gave me, it does look like the proposed building is actually further north by, I don't know how many feet. There's no way I can judge that. And that puts it ever closer to unit number 5. I think, frankly, the way things are located, this is the least damaging to us. We have parking units, or garage, rather, units that I think are going to be directly opposite the southernmost portion of this building, and so won't be visible, I don't think. But I would love it if we had markers. We could tell for sure exactly how visible is it going to be.
Actual physical markers placed on the property?
Just if they could put 4-corner posts or something, and so we could just go look at it. And I am, concerned that somehow something that looks fairly innocuous could be much worse in reality if we hadn't seen exactly where it was going to be placed. And so I would love it if you would be kind enough to ask them to do that.
Mr. Flanagan?
Is that something, Gil, that could be done, just so that we have a look at it?
I can ask the client. By the way, I have here, this may help. This is an aerial photograph taken by the drone that, that the press owns. This is the area where the building would go, and as you can see, all of the screening is going to be maintained. In fact, if you want to, you can have that.
Yeah, I'd love it, if I could.
Take that.
Yeah, that, in other words, you're not cutting down anything
No,
that's there now.
augmenting it, if anything.
Help. And then the lighting issue, I know that now that you've brought it up, it's something I don't think we even considered, but to make sure that whatever floodlights are there are pointed away from our apartments so that they don't have any impact on them at all.
Actually, if you look on the elevations which was submitted, on the side of the building, there are these three downward shining lights that will not project beyond the property boundaries. They're actually on both sides. You can see there are three on each, on the north, I'm sorry, on the west, and three on the east, but they're all very low intensity, and there's a specification that I submitted.
Okay.
We deliberately did it so that there's virtually no lighting. They're just security lighting more than anything else.
And did you get a copy from the building department of that PP1? This one?
I don't believe
Should be in the file.
Yes, that's.
It shows, the building goes about less than 10 feet north of the existing northwest
Is that right?
corner of the building.
You know, it's funny, the copy they made, the existing building, the outline of it came out very indistinctly, and what I've done in red is I've tried to copy it.
And that's about where it is.
And are you saying it's only 10 feet
From,
north?
exactly.
And of course, the person who lives in unit number 5, the southern edge of her apartment is almost directly in line with the existing building, so that the proposed building is going to stick more into and possibly become visible from her rear yard. As it is now, I mean, if she looks directly east, the existing building is not visible. Now, there is considerable screening and so on, and so I'm not unaware of that, and so even but that's really why I was asking for, if we could just see the four corners where that is, we could tell just what impact it's going to have on that one apartment. And I think, I didn't have this overhead that Gil just gave me, and looking at that, it looks like our unit 4 will not be able to see this building with the existing screening. But unit 5 is the one we're most concerned about. And even there, the screening is considerable. I don't know if you've been down to see the site. It is really substantial, and I wish you'd look at it from our side if you haven't, but you probably have. And that's our concern, anyhow.
Mr. Flanagan, if you'd ask your client if they'd be amenable to that.
I'll be happy to do that. Whoever made the point, I think, is correct. On the site plan that was submitted, there's a dotted outline of the existing garage building. The proposed building will be, I would say, maybe only about 10 feet further north. You can see it fairly well on the actual site plan itself. But I'll certainly ask my client to put 4 stakes in the ground.
Gil, former Mayor Hattrick here and Mr. Rumpf, I will tell you a quick story. When Donald Trump was in everybody's horizon right now, built a wonderful golf course recently in Scotland. He had lots of objections. He was mad at windmills and everything else, but there were several property owners that said that golf course is going to ruin my view of the North Sea just above Aberdeen. Perfect Donald Trump solution that I'm sure will appeal to the press. He surrounded those 2 houses in tall, wonderful pine trees, and they're totally protected from the golf course and everything else. Now, they can't see the North Sea anymore, and all the drilling ships going out, but it works. So I'm sure that the press will look at that possibly favorably with what's going on and take care of this issue, because I think you can do a lot when you've got different uses conflicting.
I think one point that Tim made is that there are some substantial large trees there. We wouldn't want to take them down to put something else in because of the shading situation. We don't want to make it any worse.
Somebody would just let me know, Bill, when those stakes have been put in there, so we can go take a look at it and satisfy ourselves that
Good idea.
somehow some things that shield us from the proposed building aren't going to disappear. I know you're assuring us that they won't.
You could probably
The
shift
word
it.
has always been top to go, so I would love to see that if you don't mind.
And that could, by the way, be a condition of approval also if you did grant a site plan approval to this. But yes, I'll call you.
Is there anyone else who'd like to comment on this application? No. Mr. Flanagan, would you request a adjournment to the next meeting?
I would think so, and respectfully request if that situation is satisfied, we could close the hearing at that point, as long as there's no issue remaining.
If there's no further comment and that
From the
issue is
president.
resolved.
If it's something official, Bo, the president of the association could notify us that it's been met. Somebody official.
May I have a motion to,
Well, adjourn for all purposes
yeah.
to the,
Can I just ask before you adjourn the meeting, my name's Dr. Ray, I'm a little late. Was that on the Epley Roland building on Windmill Lane that was an application put in this evening? I didn't want to interrupt before when I walked in.
it's, that one's gone already.
Excuse me?
That one's been adjourned already. It was heard and adjourned.
Tonight.
It was moved up in front of, they moved it up. They had a reason for doing it, but yes.
Mm.
Oh, okay.
No, we didn't move that one up.
No, no.
We moved up,
You're talking about the.
no, we moved up this
Can I get a
subdivision.
copy of what,
Crease
what was submitted this evening as
Crease
far as-
properties.
Wasn't the time and again building?
It was the Time and Again building. That was not moved up.
So that
Oh, no,
happened
you're
this
right.
evening, it happened this
Sorry.
evening?
Mhm.
Yes. Could I just get a copy of what was submitted, because I know it wasn't voted on, I didn't want to interfere in something that I didn't hear.
You'd have to go to the
To the,
building
you have to go
department.
to the building department and request it.
There's nothing new submitted
Nothing.
this evening. It's
Oh, I'm sorry, it wasn't,
an existing application, and tonight was the public hearing, and there was no comment from the public, so the meeting was, so the application was adjourned to the next month.
So make a motion at the request of the applicant to adjourn for all purposes Southampton Town newspapers.
Seconded.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
A few tennis courts to review. Halsey Holdings
Was
has been
adjourned.
adjourned, and 70 Pheasant Close East.
Housing and zoning.
It's not in the file.
Your memo, you sent a memo on Halsey.
I have two, but pass it around.
Kathy, you sent a memo on Halsey, right?
I did, but apparently it didn't make it into the
I read it.
packet. Didn't make it into the packet.
no, but,
I read it.
got it.
Is this it?
Yeah.
Good night, Mr.
Oh, maybe made to the phone.
Nice to see you.
I'm number 5.
Are you 5? Nice to have you here. I was trying to figure out who 4 was.
Unfortunately, I'm number 5.
It's really nice from the front door.
As long as I can.
Good evening. My name is John Laffey. I'm the architect for the applicant for the tennis court over on
Halsey,
70 Pheasant Pond,
Pheasant.
Pheasant Close East.
This is the one that's going north-south instead of east-west.
That is correct.
Do you want to read through your comments?
I could give you a copy of a memo that I prepared today.
You didn't get that in your packet.
I didn't even get a packet.
Oh, no, there was one here that said,
It's not, it's,
it was thin.
I didn't get more.
There it is. There we go. Okay.
oh, yeah, it was distributed, Kathy.
Yeah, we have it.
It wasn't in mine, so I guess she figured I'd bring my own copy.
She figured you knew what you wrote.
Yeah. Yeah, we're not up there yet.
These are my files.
Oh, you brought that?
These are my ancient files. I pray over. These are all the road appeals.
You want to read through those, Kath?
Yeah,
This is
so
here,
there's
there it
a
is.
number of items that need to be addressed in the application. One is that, I guess this house is coming down, the house that's there now. I didn't drive by, I didn't have
That's
time
correct.
today, but so the existing coverage exceeds the allowable coverage, as will the proposed coverage. So my understanding is this would have to go to the zoning board. So I don't know if an application has been made to the zoning board at this point for the overall application, but it exceeds the coverage limitations.
We have not made that application yet. I was under the impression from the building department that we would be, as of right, to have the amount of lot coverage as currently on the site.
As of right?
As I believe that's what I was told.
I can check
So
with
I think it's a
the-
pre-existing lot coverage that's
Right.
grandfathered?
Well,
That's
they're
correct.
taking everything down, they're starting over, so
Well, I was told that I would,
I'll check with.
It's not a renovation.
I
They came
would,
from Tom Foster?
I'd spoken to Tin specifically about
Okay.
it, and
Good to
I believe John had,
You might have a policy, I don't know about, so.
okay, I can only tell you what I was told.
We declare
Okay.
renovation.
So I'll let you know.
Okay?
Okay. And then there's a radius map provided, but the owners of record need to be provided for the neighboring properties. That was missing from that plan. The drainage plan doesn't have enough details on it. And also there's a calculation for the amount of cubic feet of storage that's required, and you
Mhm.
only need 2 pools in each line, correct?
Yes, thank you.
So you should show the depth of the sunken tennis court. There is an indication of what the depth is because of the elevation of the top and the bottom of the wall. It shows that it's 4 feet.
4 feet, yep.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So, but that should be indicated someplace. And landscaping, on the landscaping, there's 2 openings. You have one on the west and one on the east, I believe.
That's correct?
And the one that's on the west faces the property to the west, obviously. And there's a privet hedge there, but typically when it's facing another house, we ask that it kind of wraps around to provide a little extra screening. Privet hedge isn't the best for, it's not really an evergreen. So, especially now that there's 2 entrances that are proposed. So if there's a way that could be wrapped around a bit more to provide a little more protection for the neighbors, that would be better.
And the existing property right now is currently wrapped with privet.
Mhm.
It's probably 20 feet tall, if it was an inch, and it's probably, 4 or 5 feet thick. Is that, is it because it's dropping its leaves that you're concerned that it's being seen by its neighbors? I'd prefer to leave it open if I could possibly, just because it's, it's sunken, but if that's a requirement of this board, I would do that.
It could be a consideration, sure. Maybe take some photographs
Sure.
from the location.
Sure.
To show the thickness of the privet hedge. I'll also be stopping by, so.
Great.
Okay. And that was it.
And I don't know your applicant, but it's been my history for the decades we've had tennis courts, that north-south tennis courts in the village, despite people's immediate love of tennis, are rarely used. East-west tennis courts tend to be of the few that are used, those that are used. So whatever your designers are doing, you might call that to their attention if they really love tennis and they're really going to use it as a tennis court. There's a question.
I'll take it.
Duly noted.
Thank you.
It's noted that the existing tennis court is east-west.
It's east-west, as are all but 1.5 of them in that neighborhood, of the about 11 that I counted, are east-west. If you can use them in the summer. Now, maybe they're Thanksgiving and Easter tennis players only, but that may work. But talk to them about tennis first and then get to it.
So you'd like to adjourn this to the next meeting?
Yes, I would.
Make a motion at the request of the applicant to adjourn for all purposes the 70 Pheasant Close East Tennis Court application.
Give a second.
Seconded.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
In subdivision review, OYA Associates, I was pleased to see a letter in the file from Mr. Bennett advising that the trustees are going to vote on the park fee issue September 10th.
My gracious. Thursday?
Believe it when I say it.
So hopefully we can resolve that application at the next meeting, but until then, he requests an adjournment until then.
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. 550 and 554 Hill Street. Also, a note in the file, a letter in the file from Mr. Flanagan requesting an adjournment until the October meeting.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Beach Plum we did.
Eminent East Corporation.
Yeah. This is a renewal of a renewal, isn't it still alive?
That's right. Trying to breathe some more life into this
No, it's
subdivision.
a question, it's alive, but is it breathing? What do we do?
It had a heartbeat at least at the work session. But anyway, I think what we decided at the work session or talked about was essentially to continue the sketch plan that had been previously granted for the Jagged Trust. And by the way, I did go back to the client after you made mention of some clearing that took place on the property. And the explanation I got from the client was that this lot was formerly part of a farm field. There was a lot of brush there, and there was some dumped concrete from an old foundation, so the client cleaned that all up. So it was a cleanup more than anything. It's not done in anticipation of the subdivision. They wanted it just simply to clean it up.
It's just scraped down to the dirt, so I don't know if it's gonna be blowing around or if they should put some cover on it. Because they didn't just scrape and cleared it off, they took it right down to the
I'll
dirt.
certainly ask them. I'll certainly ask them. But at least it wasn't in anticipation of something that hadn't been approved. That was my main concern.
Do we have, Pam, do we have a copy of this sketch plan approval in the file?
No, I asked for it to be included and it didn't.
Because I couldn't
come.
remember, and then I checked the files, and I was not here when it was approved.
Yeah, when I filed the application,
Do you have an extra copy of what was approved?
I probably do.
There was a picture of it.
I have my copy.
Because I filed a complete package that included all of that. Let me see if I have an extra. Probably do.
The answer is they didn't make an order.
Yeah, here it is. Well, that's actually an original from the file, but I can certainly
Planning again, sounds like.
let you have it. It doesn't note the vote.
No, but do you have a copy of the map?
Yes, I do.
Let's see. What is trees?
Because I looked for it in the file, and I couldn't find it in the file.
I do. Bear with me a minute, I will certainly
I saw a picture.
get it, because I know I submitted it as part of the application when I put it in.
That's not right.
Yeah. Switched hands, I was,
North Main Street.
I have one.
You got one? Sketch plan, last revised September 5th, 2012. Okay. I don't know where these things go, I submitted 10 of them, but it's...
because my last recollection of the meeting, we were talking about doing drainage in the street. Aldo?
Condition of final approval, I think that's when we...
And that's what it was, it's a condition of final approval?
Yeah, that's the way we talked about it when we reviewed it the first time.
Okay.
We did talk about it, I think that was agreed then. So I guess where I'd hope to go with this would be to be able to schedule it for a public hearing. That's really what I'm here for more than anything else.
So, if it's a continuation of what they did, I guess that's what we're supposed to do, so.
Respectfully request you to do that.
This is on sketch plan, are you?
Sketch plan.
We're gonna keep it at sketch plan.
Yeah, I guess that's the question. Since it's already been approved once, is there a need to redo it as a sketch plan, or could we go right to final?
It's probably better to redo the sketch plan, Gil, and then
Get
maybe
public
go to
comment.
final.
In case that's changed.
That's
Hill-
okay.
Hill
Because
Street's,
technically this expired, so I don't disagree with that.
North Hill Street's coming a long way since it first started, so maybe we should let the public have that.
Right, no, I'm fine with doing the sketch plan, noticing the sketch plan, that's fine.
Motion to schedule this for public hearing?
So moved.
October.
October,
Fine.
the,
Whatever it is, what date?
October 5th?
5.
Do I have a second?
Seconded.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Aye.
In site plan review, Habata Southampton is awaiting response regarding proof of recorded covenants.
Yeah, there's also other issues with regard to the fire marshal and the gates, and I also advised Mr. Bragman's office that there had been no application for the gates to the planning board, and mentioned that if he wanted to put that on the hearing for this evening, he had only to call up the building department and get that on the schedule, so obviously that wasn't done. So that would be adjourned for all purposes to October 5.
So moved?
Seconded.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Taconic Land Trust, 296 Hampton Road.
This has to go for final referrals to the highway superintendent as well as to Dean McNamara. And then just to make sure that there are no changes that they're requesting, and then
Fire.
then it can go for decision. So I'll do that this week.
It's a fire and public access, or what?
Fire and highway, yeah.
Yeah. I'll move that what we.
Adjourn at the request of the
adjourn it-
applicant.
Adjourn it until the 5th. So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Capital Telecom Acquisitions, 153 Powell Avenue.
We have to approve this to hire the consultant, right?
So, can I just,
No, we already,
We did
we
that.
do have to approve it, yes.
there was a resolution by the village trustees to be able to collect fees for this type of application. Okay.
Here it is.
We have to approve
That
what
is
the
something
villages,
you
what the
guys
trustees have
want.
approved to hire the
That's-
consultant to get it done as soon as
Great.
possible.
I understand.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I don't want to jump in. Well, maybe I do. We were in front of the zoning board a couple of weeks ago for the public hearing. The zoning board, through council, advised us of this new local law, made the request formal. I've been in contact with Steve Funch. I have the requested escrow fee today. I was chatting briefly before we started. I don't know if it's appropriate to submit now, or if you'd rather me file it with the administrator. Aside from this meeting, additionally, as part of the zoning board hearing, we had a parade of experts come in. They prepared various reports, which were supplements to the application items that the board has already seen. I sent digital copies to Kathy and to the village's consultant, Mr. Comey. I have hard copies of them here, so that each board member has a copy. I have a couple of other items, actually one other item as well. Notwithstanding the fact that I understand procedurally the village is still ironing out whatever process Mr. Comey is going to be contracted, but he did reach out, made a couple of asks in advance of a letter that he issued last week. He requested a revised structural letter. I have that for the board. I have copies of that for the zoning board, so that they have it. His other questions that my experts are working on, I expect to have a supplemental submission to this board with copies to zoning, since I understand that they want to coordinate with this board, although this board will be lead. And we'll submit that packet. I think that we'll have it in advance of the next work session meeting, and would request that we be placed on for the next available hearing date.
So at this point, with Mr. Comey's request for further information, you've either provided it or you're checking on it?
It's in the queue, yes. One of the things that he asked for is foundation drawings for the tower structure itself. Those are generated after the steel is ordered and is fabricated. That is happening now. I understand that's a 2-week process for that to turn around. It was requested last week, so I think you'll have it in advance of the meeting that is set for the 28th, I believe is the next time this board meets for work session. So my intention is to file it in advance of that meeting. And the structural letter I have for you, and the radio frequency engineering material is really just, he wants to see all of the AT&T frequencies that are being replicated from the Cablevision tower to this one. One of his asks was confirmation that AT&T is proposing to go at the same height. It's in the lease agreement. I know he got a lot of paperwork that maybe he didn't catch that was already expressed in there, but I can have it recertified in an affidavit if he needs it.
So that sounds good. Kathy, anything further?
No, that's all, thanks.
We just have to
Right.
authorize Comey working
Well, I guess that's-
officially.
Yeah, officially through the
Officially.
collecting of the escrow, right,
Yeah.
exactly. I mean, he has been.
He's retained by the
Village, but we have to-
village anyway.
At
Right.
their expense, we have to, but he is working at their expense.
Right.
Yes.
That's the resolution.
That's the resolution that
trustees
you'll
passed that we have to
act on
ratify.
tonight.
The resolution is not specified to Mr. Comey. The resolution is only,
No, in general,
yes.
General, right.
but it applies to him to work officially on the basis that was selected by the trustees, and it says here the planning board has to approve that motion ourselves. We cast a vote. That's the one that's in your packet.
Yes. So there are two resolutions.
So this one is, that's them then.
It's two, what's the second?
Let you just have them read it.
I only got
No,
one.
we only got one.
Okay.
What's the second one?
Why don't we pass the first resolution first?
Which is this one?
Okay.
Yes, which is the one I drafted, and then
Right.
pass the, this one specific to this
That's the
application.
first one.
So, Bo, what's the summary of your resolution?
This is a resolution in which the board is going to adopt and ratify the local law, adopt and ratify and incorporate the local law of August 13th into its own procedures, as recommended by Rick DePietris. So that acknowledges that the local law has been drafted, why it was drafted, and then the planning board will adapt it for its procedures.
Make a motion to approve and adopt the amendment to the village code as presented.
Resolution to adopt and to ratify and adopt.
Ratify and adopt.
The site plan review amendment. I second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Now, if you want to read the, Steve, the resolution drafted by Kathy, which then specifically applies to this application under the new law.
Planning Board Resolution, whereas the village's planning and environmental consultant has recommended that there is a need for additional consultant to assist in the review of the application of Capital Telecom Acquisition LLC and New Singular Wireless PCS LLC due to the particular nature of such application. Resolved that the Planning Board concurs with such recommendation and hereby notifies the applicants of such need and the applicant's responsibility for payment of an additional fee for such review in accordance with 116-38C subsection 2 of the zoning code as amended on August 13th, 2015.
So moved.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So at the request of the applicant, to adjourn Capital Telecom Acquisitions to,
Public hearing, or public-private hearing.
So, you know.
Well, for the 28th.
for the 28th.
So moved.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Do you want to give me that check, John, or do you want to communicate that? You can just send it to Steve.
Happy to do it any way you think is.
It's your call. I mean, I don't mind doing it, but I would think you might want a
I'll handle
record
it that
from
way.
your
That way
own
I can file
office.
a copy of the structural letter
Yeah.
officially with the zoning board,
Yeah.
but do you want me, Kathy, you already
Yeah.
have
I already have
copies
yeah,
of each
exactly.
of these.
And I haven't read the other one yet, so.
It's tough for her to stamp those in. It's
Sure.
better to go directly to the building department, but
Do you want me
that,
just to log the, I mean, if I'm gonna file the other stuff, that's
Yes,
fine.
yeah, yeah.
But again, it's just, these are the exhibits that we
Yeah.
file with the zoning board.
please, no, have them,
Yeah.
because they'll stamp them in
Sure.
at the same time, John.
I'll handle it that way, thank you.
It's, something to do with, I believe, Eric Road.
I have a motion to
We have
approve
to
the
go.
minutes as written for the August 3rd, 2015 meeting.
They're actually not.
I haven't read them.
Not ready yet.
They have to,
I thought that's the one
they
we
have
have
to
to
go to the health
approve.
No, we
department,
approved
they're
the
not
other
done
two
with the-
at
then they come
the
back
work
to us.
session, but this is the,
Us to-
this is the work, the last work session. I haven't seen
So we
it.
don't have
We
that.
already did.
No, so we can't approve
Okay, so
that.
we can't approve
Yeah,
that.
we already did that. Fantastic.
Motion to adjourn?
The next meeting is
Just keep saying aye.
Tuesday, September, no, sorry,
is September 28th
right.
at 5 o'clock, which will be the work session, followed by the regularly scheduled meeting the following Monday of October. At this point, if there's no further business, may I have a motion to
Wait a
adjourn?
minute, I have a question. On Crease Properties,
Increase.
Rudy says they don't have to go to the Board of Health. And I understand a little bit that they don't have to, but there's really not a proper solution to all these problems. Can't we make them go to the Board of Health? Can't that be a requirement? Or can it be? I'm asking, I don't
Actually,
know.
I mean, I think.
I think what should happen is, the best thing would be to have them produce a letter from the Board of Health saying that the Board of Health doesn't need to review it if that's their position. Now, it's
Because
subject
we
to
know
what
how he
Alva-
gets, and he'll just start
That's
yelling at
exactly
us.
what you're
And,
something-
so I want to know, I mean, it's, Everything we see about this property just looks like it should be made into a park.
We want to discuss it a little further, I'd be happy to. I did speak to John about it, and.
Wait a minute, should we, oh, never mind. Yeah.
On the record, off the record, I'm not sure how we want to do this.
The camera's on.
You haven't closed your meeting.
You haven't closed the meeting.
We're on the record.
Well, what
I
is your
said he was
legal
3
opinion
on the
about the,
record. Oh, my
Yes.
God.
about the grandfather
Oh, my God.
nature of it?
It's okay.
Well,
mean that for-
as far as the village goes, I think the grandfathering looks appropriate. However,
Said Gilmartin, I think it was.
this board and myself included are not really, do not have the jurisdictional domain of the health department, and that's something that the health department should address. And normally with a site plan or subdivision, you have conditional decisions like the Paul Robbins subdivision, conditioned upon approval of the project by the health department. So it's completely appropriate that happened.
It seems
I
to
must
me
say that
it
it's
would
rather
be-
unusual for me to hear that somebody says they don't, under these circumstances, have to get approval by the health department, but I don't know.
It seems to me inappropriate that if what Aldo says that they're going to be sitting in groundwater, which is not allowed.
Yeah.
That this board would say okay without having the Board of Health say that it's okay.
Well, and said, I think this board has every right to say that if that's their representation, that they don't, and that's the domain of the health department, to produce a letter from the health department saying that they don't.
If there truly is no other alternative, I get their point, but they need somebody besides.
Verify it. We can't verify, they're gonna verify it for us. That's fine.
There are alternatives that they have to address, or they could possibly be addressing. Basically, that building is coming down. I don't know if anybody's driven next to it, but the building in the back, you can see light through the roof. So that building has to be redone completely. The front portion, they've already said that they're gonna remove. So if they're gonna remove the front building and have to rebuild the second building, they can try to consolidate a bit this building somewhat, raise its elevation so that they may have some room to put in a system that's above groundwater. But if they're trying to maintain everything status, as the current status, the ground floor elevation here, I mean, there's no way you're gonna fit a system it's gonna be in the groundwater. I mean, the system itself is 4 feet deep, has to be 2 feet or 3 feet above groundwater. So that's 6 feet. Then there's a cover, and there's another cover, and then you have a pitch coming down from the first floor. So unless the building's a lot higher, and even with that, you'd have to build a wall around this thing in order to protect it from going to your neighbors. So that's one possible solution, is for them to redo the building, raise the elevation, and put a system that might have enough room. Right now, they don't have enough room to put a septic tank and 4 8-foot diameter leaching pools in a space that they're showing.
They could use those low-level leaching Coltech.
But it still takes up room.
Yeah,
They don't
they're only
have
like
room.
a foot.
They don't have the room, even if you say a foot, physically, you're not gonna be able to do it. And the second issue is still the stormwater. That's strictly in the village's prerogative of saying that stormwater should be contained on a property. If this entire system goes in, the sanitary system goes in, there's really no room at all for any stormwater disposal. So the stormwater obviously gonna go down the street and into Lake Agawam.
Well, they did rip up the whole back parking lot and plant it with grass, so
Yeah, well,
you're gonna
grass
get
still
some
has a
there,
runoff.
you know.
Still has a runoff
Yeah.
factor, and the roof, there's no percolation in the roof, obviously, so that's gotta come down and go somewhere. Another alternative that was suggested, but again, they're gonna have to wanna engineer it, is possibly to pipe the waste up to the back parking lot here. And as some areas in the village have done, use the village parking area as an expansion of their
Yeah, I
sanitary.
think they looked into that, but I think they were landlocked by another property.
Don't know, I mean,
I think they mentioned that.
I don't wanna
Yeah, I
be
think they mentioned that already.
I'm really saying that's a possibility.
Right.
You're talking about possibly a 2-inch line, forced line of 2 inches
We
or
know that
less,
property.
with a macerator at
We
the
know that
building,
property.
and drive it up.
Mhm.
That, to me, seems to be,
Mhm.
if they can get permission, that seems to be a
Right.
doable
Mhm.
solution. If not, you're gonna be faced with same as Tuscan House, a constant pumping out of the system.
Right.
And in the long run, they're gonna pay more for this continuing maintaining of the system by pumping it out because of the high groundwater situation. So those are my, and I think you should ask them to get a health department approval, and if they contend that they don't need one, then I think the vote's correct. Let's get a letter from the health department saying, we don't want to deal with this.
Okay.
Those are my thoughts on it.
All right. Make a motion to adjourn?
Anything else?
Seconded.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.